Welcome to the I Told My Story channel. I'm Clara. A Sunday morning, I had just argued with my mom again. She was upset, thinking I spent too much time on my phone over the weekend. While I was frustrated with the constant criticism, the tension flared up again during dinner.
Clara, you spent so much time on your phone this weekend. That's enough. You need to study more.
My mom said with a tone of slight anger. I already studied, I replied defensively.
If you'd studied, would it hurt to take on a little more responsibility?
She said with a hint of reproach in her eyes. At that moment, I couldn't hold myself back and snapped. If you could live in my shoes for just one day, maybe you wouldn't judge me like this. My mom frowned and quickly responded.
If you knew what one day of my life is like, you wouldn't act so irresponsibly.
The argument was escalating, but I was determined not to lose my temper. I wish we could switch places for a day and try to understand each other, I thought to myself as I walked out of the kitchen, speeding up in my steps to get away. It was morning.
Come on, lazy bones, you're going to school. Wake up.
From under the covers came a voice. Mom, make breakfast first, then wake me up.
Get up now. You always take forever to get dressed and do your hair.
We locked eyes, and that's when I realized my mom was me and I was my mom. We both screamed at the same time. This can't be! Sitting at the kitchen table, we were both completely clueless about what to do. My mom, her eyes filled with worry, asked, "This is unbelievable. What are we going to do now?"
Let's stay calm,
I said, taking a deep breath.
There must be a way to fix this.
My mom looked even more anxious. This can't be happening. I have a big meeting at work today, I quickly responded.
And I have an exam today.
My mom thought for a moment and then spoke decisively. All right, let's stay calm. We'll manage for today. You'll take my place and I'll take yours. In the meeting, just say, okay, to everything. If you don't understand something, just nod.
Okay,
I said hesitantly.
And you'll handle school. You already know my best friend Mia. If anything happens, you can just ask her for help.
Deal, my mom said as she got up from the table. Both of us tried to suppress the panic and excitement inside. According to my mom, that day at school, she saw Mia and Hazel leaning against the wall talking in the hallway. When she approached them, Mia said, "Oh, hey, finally, you're late again, huh?" My mom tried to act naturally and replied, "I missed the bus." Mia immediately suggested, "Don't worry, let's skip the first class and hang out for a bit." Reflexively, my mom blurted out, "How can you skip class? What would your parents say?" Then realizing she was supposed to be Clara, she quickly corrected herself. "I mean, wouldn't it be better if we went to class?" Mia looked at her in surprise. "Clara, you're always such a buzzkill. What's the big deal if we skip one class?" Hazel chimed in with a mocking grin. "She'll never really fit in with us anyway. Always in her own world." Despite the anger building up inside her, my mom stayed calm and firmly said, "No, I'm going to class," and left them behind to head to the classroom. Meanwhile, I was sitting in a meeting room, staring blankly at the papers in front of me. Everyone around the table was seriously taking notes or discussing the topics at hand. I was struggling to keep up with what was being said when suddenly the manager turned to me.
"Well, Mrs. Harper,"
he said, his face serious,
"what are your suggestions for increasing sales?"
I had no idea what to say.
Maybe we could try a new campaign or offer some discounts.
I stammered, my voice growing fainter. The manager raised his eyebrows and with a faintly mocking tone said,
"A new campaign? Brilliant. Like that's never been tried before."
His voice dripping with sarcasm. All eyes were on me, and under the pressure, my heart was pounding. The manager continued,
"Mrs. Harper, I want you to work on this detail over the weekend. If we don't see an increase in sales next month, we'll need to have a very serious conversation."
According to my mom, after the exam, she went to the cafeteria with Mia and Hazel. As soon as she sat down, Mia sighed deeply and said, "I'm definitely going to fail this test. I spent the whole weekend gaming and didn't even think about studying." Hazel immediately added, "Same. Time flies when you're gaming, but it was totally worth it. Then they both turned to my mom, who they thought was Clara, and Mia said, "You should download the game too and play with us. It's so much fun." My mom hesitated for a moment, but quickly replied, "I don't know. Shouldn't we focus on studying?" Mia rolled her eyes dramatically. "Ugh, Clara, you never join us for anything except Instagram. What's the big deal if you play with us a little?" Just then, Hazel chimed in mockingly. "She won't play. Her mom would scold her because she's supposed to be studying." And they both burst into laughter. At that moment, my mom realized that these girls were constantly trying to pressure Clara into behaving the way they wanted. But seeing how Clara stood her ground despite all the pressure, she felt a newfound admiration for her. Back at the office, I was sitting at my mom's desk, staring blankly at the stack of papers in front of me. Suddenly, the door opened, and her manager walked in with a pile of files.
"Mrs. Harper, I need these done by the end of the weekend,"
he said firmly. I froze and could only manage to say, "Of course, sir." Once he left, I looked at the files on the desk. The growing stress made it hard to even breathe. How does my mom do this every day? I couldn't help but wonder. Just then, the phone rang. It was my mom's phone, and the caller ID read, "Landlord." Nervously, I picked it up.
"Mrs. Harper, you've delayed the rent again,"
the voice on the other end said irritably. Startled, I stammered, "I'll pay it as soon as possible." "Please, Mrs. Harper, I can't wait any longer. I need the payment soon," the landlord said before hanging up. The phone rang again almost immediately. This time it was the bank. Taking a deep breath, I answered.
"Mrs. Harper, you've missed this month's loan payment. To avoid damaging your credit score, please make the payment within 3 days,"
the representative said formally. "All right," I managed to say, unable to add anything else. As I put the phone down, trying to compose myself, one of my mom's colleagues walked into the office. Seeing my distressed face, she frowned. "Are you all right, Harper?" she asked. "They called about the loan payment," I replied in a shaky voice. She immediately began speaking in a stern tone.
"Well, what do you expect? You buy your daughter whatever she wants, the latest phone, luxury vacations, and now you're struggling with payments. My husband always says, when our kid grows up, they can buy what they want with their own money. You don't have to sacrifice so much."
Her words felt like arrows piercing my heart. I didn't know what to say, so I just stared at the floor. Then, softening her tone a bit, she added,
"Look, even with both my husband and me working, it's hard to take care of our child. You're doing all this on your own. That's incredible."
After she left, I sat motionless for a while. It felt like something inside me had shattered. Tears streamed down my face as I realized the sacrifices my mom made to give me a good life and how heavy a burden she carried. When I got home, I found my mom in the kitchen. The table was filled with a variety of dishes, all beautifully prepared. Seeing me, she smiled warmly and said, "Welcome home, honey." At that moment, all the emotions I had been holding back burst forth. I ran to her, hugged her tightly, and couldn't hold back my tears.
"Mom, I'm sorry,"
I said between sobs.
"Now I understand how much you've endured, how hard you've worked to raise me. I'm so sorry. Things will be different from now on. I won't do anything to upset you anymore. I'll even stop using Instagram."
My mom wrapped her arms around me tightly, and I could feel her trembling as she started crying, too. "No, honey," she said with a quivering voice. "You're already a child I'm proud of. You're strong and smart, standing firm against your friends' pressure. I've misunderstood you all along. From now on, I'll trust you more and be more respectful towards you because you're mature enough to make your own decisions." We held each other tightly, silently crying. At that moment, all the misunderstandings and resentment between us melted away. But there was still one problem. I was my mom, and she was me. How long would this situation last? That night, I fell into such a deep sleep that I struggled to wake up the next morning. Then I was jolted awake by my mom's voice.
"Mom, get up. It's morning, and you haven't made breakfast. I'm going to be late for school."
I opened my eyes in shock and looked around. What? Wait a minute. Am I still my mom? Is she still me? I shouted. This can't be. Tears streamed down my face. I sobbed. I don't want to be you anymore. It's so hard, so exhausting. My mom stood by my bedside watching me. Rolling her eyes, she smiled and said,
Clara, calm down. It was just a little joke. I'm me again, and you're you.
I paused for a moment looking at her face. Then we both burst into laughter. At that moment, I felt how much our experiences had changed our lives and our understanding of each other. From then on, we would understand each other better. Maybe what we went through was a lesson, perhaps even a miracle. Who knows?